Over the years, I've received hundreds of listener stories, people writing to me privately and in the comments section. They're bizarre, creepy, and sometimes funny brushes with the paranormal. Going forward, I'll make an effort to include more of them. Anyways, a few years back I received this account from a person calling themselves Lynda. I will read it verbatim. In the summer of 2011, my 12-year-old twin sons were having a friend sleepover. We live in a 3-story house, and all 3 of the boys were in the basement area playing. I was on the 2nd floor sitting on my couch reading a book. It was early evening, around dusk. All was peaceful other than the ruckus the boys were making downstairs. I was sitting there half reading my book when the boys all came running loudly up the stairs. The stairwell door was on a sliding mechanism, and when they got to the top, instead of sliding it, they sort of pushed on it, and it came off the track. With it off the track, it could swing back and forth. I told them I would fix the door later. Anyway, they left the door off the track, and all 3 went running up to their 3rd-floor bedroom to play. I was still on the couch when only a few seconds after all 3 had just went upstairs, I saw my son come around the corner, lift his arm, and push the now swinging stairwell door open and move down the steps. He never lifted his head to look at me. His head was down the entire time, and he never said why he was going back down there. My first thought was that he looked a bit odd and moved kind of strangely. Then I thought, why didn't he say anything? Then I figured he left something down there. This all took a matter of maybe 2 to 3 seconds, when suddenly I heard his voice laughing and talking loudly upstairs. I freaked out. I jumped off the couch, ran over to the stairwell, looked down and called his name, and he didn't answer. I swear to God, this is a real story, and every hair on my body was standing up, and I had chills. I have them now just writing about it. So I ran upstairs and saw him sitting on the floor with his brother and their friend playing. Even though I knew it was completely impossible for him to be downstairs and upstairs at the same time, I asked him if he had somehow just gone into the basement. He of course said no. I swept the basement looking for a person. I checked doors and windows and closets, even though I knew that whatever that thing was, it looked exactly like my 12-year-old son. It was as solid as a real person, was wearing exactly the same clothes my son had on. It was the same size as him and was able to push a solid door open and everything. Only it moved a bit weird and never looked at me or spoke to me. Nothing else happened that night, and I could never explain it or understand it until 3 years later, almost to the very day that the incident happened. My son was diagnosed with leukemia. He's undergone years of terrible cancer and chemotherapy and has battled it like a warrior. He is 19 now, and his treatment has now ended. He is doing great and is in remission. I've always heard that doppelgangers portend bad luck or illness, but I never thought that when I saw that thing that looked like my son, it meant something bad would happen to him. But the day he was diagnosed, I realized why I saw what I saw. I don't know for sure if it was some sort of warning or not, because it scared the hell out of me, and it felt very sinister. I pray I never see it again. There is definitely a belief that doppelgangers are sinister or even evil entities, and seeing one is considered an omen of misfortune or bad luck. But that is not always the case. I've actually covered a pretty famous story involving an oil man who claims that he was saved by his doppelganger, so I'm not convinced that all doppelgangers are negative or point to some terrible event to come. This case, however, Lynda seemed to believe the sighting of the double and her son's illness were connected, and I guess it's entirely possible that it was. When it comes to the paranormal, warnings come from the strangest of places. A red-eyed being with wings, a ghostly figure on a beach, a voice in your head telling you not to drive down that road, or even a non-existent being that looks and dresses like your son. Like something out of a comic book movie, in early 2021, a witness living in Puerto Rico came forward to UFO researcher George Martin Miranda regarding an odd military helicopter she and her husband observed in the sky one evening. What made their report stand out was that the helicopter appeared to be chasing a flying man. It was February 2021, La Charca, Caya, Puerto Rico. Mrs. Mario Rosario Diaz and her husband had just arrived at their home after an evening out. It was after midnight and both were tired and looking forward to unwinding. After getting out of their car, Maria walked over and looked around. They lived in the first house on a hilltop, and from their neighbor's front gate they could see everything in the area, the whole panorama. It was quite dark, but Maria scanned around, taking in the scenery and the night air. Her husband joined her. At that moment, something truly strange happened. Maria and her husband could not believe their eyes when something quite large suddenly flew past them. It appeared to be a dark, man-shaped figure moving in a straight line like a projectile. Maria initially assumed that it was some kind of animal, though she had to admit that she didn't know what kind of animal it could be. To her, it looked like a person somewhat. She did not see wings, and it was roughly the shape of a man's body, very big and muscular. The abs and chest looked well defined. It had no hair on its body or on its head, and its skin looked leathery and all black. It had a face, but she couldn't get a very good look at it. What she could see of it for a brief second, it appeared to be, quote, grotesque. It was not the face of a human being. Again, she had no idea what she was looking at. The figure was in the air, moving at a pretty good clip, so she had trouble gauging its height, but she thought that it was between 5 and 6 feet tall. As she and her husband stood staring at the strange creature, their attention was caught by a light beam that appeared behind it. Maria likened it to a, quote, laser beam, white and very bright. From the same point in the sky from which the beam had come, a military type of helicopter suddenly appeared. It was flying very low, and a man was standing at the door of the helicopter looking out and down. The man standing at the door of the helicopter stared at the witnesses as it flew by. It moved just past the Diaz's house, then they turned around and came back to watch them, hovering very close to the couple. The man in the door of the helicopter looked at Maria and her husband for about a minute or so. Maria sensed that they were concerned that they had seen the flying entity, and that they had been observed chasing it. After staring at them, the helicopter flew away towards the south. Maria suspected that it was heading towards the Salinas town area, where Camp Santiago military base was located at. She did not see the flying man again, nor did the helicopter ever return. They eventually went inside, and that was it. In speaking to researcher George Martin Miranda several months later, Maria and her husband were convinced that the helicopter had been pursuing the flying humanoid when they saw it. The laser-like beam of light they observed, Maria sensed that it was some kind of weapon, that they were actually firing at the entity. The fact that the helicopter actually broke off the pursuit to turn around and look at them suggested that other parties were probably involved in said pursuit, or the flying entity was either injured or slow, and they felt that they had time to double back to identify the witnesses. Maria noted that the last time she saw the creature, it had been heading towards a clump of nearby bamboo trees, behind which there was a small river with some houses and a landfill. I have covered other flying entity cases in the past, but this is the first time I've heard of one of these entities being pursued and possibly fired upon by some military types. If the Diaz's story is to be believed, it suggests that somebody in an official capacity is aware that these creatures exist and are actively trying to either capture or eradicate them. One might surmise that the flying man was merely a drone, but if so, why would the military try to shoot it down over a populated area? Why would they double back to check on the witnesses? If it was just a drone, why would they care? Clearly, Maria and her husband saw something that night that they were not supposed to see. To me, the most menacing aspect of this story is not the creature, which seemed to be just trying to evade capture or death. It was the strange men in the helicopter. Their returning to stare down the witnesses could be construed as a sort of threat, a warning to not speak of what they had seen. Maria got the very real impression that they were concerned that she and her husband had seen the creature, and seen them pursuing it. The more time you spend reading about the paranormal, the more you'll notice instances of these mysterious unmarked helicopters popping up with regards to UFOs, crop circles, and cryptids. The late John Keel wrote of phantom helicopters harassing soldiers during the Vietnam campaign. Ufologist Jenny Randles cataloged hundreds of phantom unmarked helicopter reports, primarily in the UK. Who exactly is piloting these helicopters? Nobody seems to know.